From funny moments to crazy conspiracy theories, these are the most viewed clips from the Joe Rogan Experience podcast.
There's so much stuff that we kept from the story that if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Now, when it came to the movie, we filmed it around the gunfight.
Like what?
So we filmed it, the movie around the gunfight because that's when everyone was alive. I was like, you shouldn't have known that I was going to be the guy that make it out. When they were picking the actors, I was like, so if you get somebody like an A-list actor and then everybody, they'll know that he's the one that made it out. I was like, when you're watching the movie, you shouldn't know that. Of course, Hollywood does kind of does their own thing. But the craziest part about that whole operation was getting me out of there. And that wasn't in the movie. In the movie, they did a daylight extract. Like they came in, landed, and a couple of shots, and they got out of there. In real life, it wasn't like that. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was a night, and the world was blowing up. We were in this like a volcano, like sitting in the middle of this volcano. And I remember looking down the mountain, and there's a river running down. I mean, it looked like miles down. And they had moved me. They had to carry me. I couldn't walk, and they kind of like, and we would stumble over the Green Berets, Rangers. It was a hodgepodge. Let me tell you something. When them guys showed up to rescue me, when they found me, I was laying in a riverbed, dried up, tucked under a rock. The villagers had shoved me underneath this rock, and there was this one guy I had never met before, and he was sitting there listening to a AM/FM radio, and he was scrolling through the channels. We hand those out for morale. Like the U.S. military hands those out, and he had one of them. I recognized it. And he was listening to the different channels, and I could recognize the different languages, German, Japanese, and he was like, hey, they're talking about you. And I was like, okay, I didn't know who he was. He was kind of messing with me a little bit, because I couldn't move, and he had this stinging, anyway, it's not important. And then the Gulag and a couple of the villagers came and picked me up. They had to carry me everywhere. And
Why did they save you? Because in the movie, it's confusing.
It is.
Because in the movie, it's like these guys save you, and you don't know why they're saving you.
When he found me,
they have to fight the Taliban.
Yeah, can you believe that?
Crazy.
So I had been crawling for a day and some change. I was like crawling through the mountains, and I had somehow, some way got to the top of this ridge line. I was so thirsty. I mean, there's an insanity that goes with thirst. I was so thirsty that I was willing to kill anything to get water. You can't even believe it. I was drinking my own urine, my own blood. Nothing would quench the thirst. God, I hadn't thought about this in a while. And I got to the top of this ridge line, and there was a waterfall. And I was trying to slide down into it. I was like, I'm just going to go down in here, and I'm going to hit that water, and it's going to be something good to drink. So I tried to slide down. I just took off. I got uncontrollably. I started sliding. I rotated upside down. And I remember looking over, and my rifle was sliding beside me. I couldn't throw that thing away. It's like every time I'd lose it, one of my boys was like, hey, you're going to need this. And I flipped upside down, over backwards, into the river. And I remember my knees hit me in the face, and it knocked me out again. And I was I was a blobbering mess. Everything was broken. And I rolled over, and I remember kind of sitting on all fours. I picked my head up, and I looked up, and there was that water fountain there. And I remember sliding down. This is the craziest thing. God, I hadn't thought about this. And I remember seeing this little pool of water, and I was like, oh, it'd be a great place to get something to drink. So I crawled back up into this thing, and I leaned into that waterfall, and I remember washing my face and hands. My gloves were, I had gloves on, the mechanic gloves, and all the fingers were ripped out, and the palms were ripped out. So I just it was the best water I ever had. I'll never forget it. It's cold, and I was hurting real bad. And I remember hearing somebody screaming at me, and I kind of turned around, and over my shoulder, there was a guy standing there looking at me, pointing at me. He was like, Taliban, Taliban. So I swung around with my rifle, and then all of a sudden, behind me again, I could hear someone screaming at me. They're like, and I look up, and there's this guy standing on the hill that I'd just fallen off of. But he didn't have a weapon. He was just pointing at me. And then there were some guys on the ridgeline moving around. They had weapons. I saw them. So I turned back around, and I kind of started to crawl. I was like, man, I was in a channelized area. It was kind of bad. And I remember I was leaning against this rock. I was sitting on my butt. I had my rifle in my hand. I was breathing. I couldn't breathe. I'd bitten my tongue in half, and I was like, that's a crazy story. But the guy screamed at me again. I turned around to shoot, and he saw me, and he ducked behind this rock. And then, right over my left shoulder, probably 30 yards, not even that, I hear, American, American. And I kind of turned around, and it was Gulag, one of the main villagers who rescued me. And I turned around on him. I had my gun at my hip. My safety was off. My tension was out of my trigger. And he was kind of looking. We were staring at each other straight in the eyes. And I was like death. You know how you can smell death when it's there? I was like, man, okay, let's go. And God, I don't know why I didn't kill him. I didn't have to even go to my shoulder to kill him. I had the tension out of my trigger. I was just sitting there looking at him. He was looking at me, and he wouldn't say it. He said American a couple times, and then he said it again. I was like, Taliban? And he was like, American? And then he kind of put his hands up, and I came off my trigger, kind of wanting to kill him. And he started walking down on me. He's like, okay. Shampoo, hydrate. That's what he's telling me, shampoo, hydrate.
Shampoo, hydrate?
That's what he said. 2 English words he knew. I was like, shampoo, hydrate. You know how good that sounded? I was like, bro, I would love some water, and if you want to wash my hair. It's so funny. So if you ever get into a bad situation and you're about to lose your mind, just say shampoo and hydrate, and you'll be fine, dude. And I'm like, can you believe that? That's what he said to me.
That's crazy.
And I dropped my muzzle down, and he walked up on me, and I pulled a grenade out. I pulled a pin. Don't ever do that. And I was going to, like, if you try something, I'll just kill us all. I don't care. But then he kind of rolled me over, and he's like, it's okay. I got you. You know, I could just tell. You know how when you can tell, like, hey, man, I got you. I freaking got you. You can feel that. Like, you can feel if someone's like, hey, man, I got you, and then I'm going to jack you up later. And this guy was like, man, I got you, man. And I repinned that grenade. I'll never forget. I was like, I heard you're not supposed to do I mean, there's so much crazy stuff. Well, anyways, all these kids came running out from everywhere, and they picked me up. I couldn't walk, and they carried me down, started carrying me down the ridgeline into the valley. And there was a village down there. And then the kids and everybody, they were laughing and whatnot, and they pulled me into this room, and they started kind of doctored me up, stopped my bleeding, patched me up, gave me all the water I could drink, and then the Taliban came in after that and then snatched me up. But
So how much of what was in the script, I know you didn't see the movie, but how much of what was in the script was accurate?
every bit of it. Everybody died. Like in the movie, when you see those guys falling down a mountain, it looks cool. Imagine going past cool to when it looks like chaos. Imagine playing your favorite sport on the side of a mountain with people shooting at you.
It didn't look cool.
I was like, if
It looked
can't
horrific.
look sexy. I mean, I it was terrible. I mean, like, it's getting ripped apart. And like, we would come in, and the guys would just be like, Matt was shot in the face, and it was kind of, his eyes were gone. And like, I'm a medic. Some of them were bad. Some of them was bad. But then, you know, I was like, I didn't know what to do. I never knew what to do. Isn't that crazy? I was like, man, I was well trained. I was like, I got my ass in a pickle. I couldn't get out. I didn't know what to do. And I would just sit there, and there'd be times when I would think about my brother and all my buddies. I was like, hey, man, you guys have done stupid. I'm still here. Come get me. And then I could see aircraft flying overhead, and I was like, oh, I'm right here. And they would just keep flying. And then someone would try to kill me. Like a wall would blow up, or a bullet would zip through the wall, and then they'd have to move me. Man, it was a hell of a week. It was rough. They left me in this hole for a while. They buried me. And I was like, man, I'm a foreign man in a foreign land. Everybody's dead. I mean, who knows where I'm at? I was in hell. I was literally in hell. And if it wasn't for them, I mean, and the way that whole thing worked out, it's funny when I talk about it. It's hard to wrap your head around it, right? Like, man, why am I even sitting here? Because y'all came and got me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it when y'all showed up. I signed up to be an expendable asset, to die if necessary. That was the sexiest thing I ever heard of. I was nobody. I have a special skill. I was expendable asset, and you work till you become dependable, and they'll kind of keep you around. So when y'all showed up, I couldn't believe it. I remember talking to them guys like, man, I can't believe y'all made it out here. We were out in the middle of nowhere. And then the first time I ever got like scared was when they were with me and trying to get me out of there. I was like, hey man, I hope y'all can get me out of here. Is that selfish? I was like, man, I hope that's selfish, is it? I was like, I sure would like to live, man. And they it was a crate to get me out of there. It's a whole different movie altogether. Those Green Berets and those Rangers and PJs that were on that plane, on the hill, the pilots, like Spanky, he was one of the pilots, Skinny. When they came in to crash. They don't ever talk about that. Like, he had to crash that bird on the side of a mountain to get in there, and he did it. He didn't give a shit. He's like, watch this, boom, and just brought it in. I mean, there was a gunfight going on from the top and the bottom. Every aircraft we had in country was wagging, like spinning overhead. The Spectres, that's the hand of God, or the finger of God. I mean, the weaponry we have, man, they can look down on you and just erase you. And they got me out of there. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, I have friends that are pretty overweight, and one that died pretty recently who was really big. And he just had this feeling when he would meet people. I mean, he talked about it a little bit. He was just obese.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this thing where you're just, oh, look at this enormous fat guy. And then to go from that to, oh, there's a guy. There's a normal guy.
Yeah.
That's just a guy. It's a 168-pound guy. Normal. No difference between him and
I
anybody
gotta
else.
tell you, I know we love to beat up on fat people. We love to turn it into a character defect. But I gotta tell you, virtually every fat person that I know or that I've taken care of, they are not disproportionately eating more than their peers. In some cases, yes, but not on balance. The problem is that they simply do everything incorrectly metabolically. You know,
So their body is functioning incorrectly.
yeah, and it's you know,
And it's
I think there's a
exacerbated by their
genetic
diet.
component. I think there are dietary exacerbations. I think certainly not exercising makes things worse. So there are lots of predisposing factors. But at the end of the day, what's happening is when you and I eat, like let's take a meal that like if you had pancakes, bacon, and scrambled eggs, that would be like a really good mix of, that'd be a third carbs, a third protein, a third fat. So that's like a shit ton of nutrient, right? If you or I ate that, yeah, it probably wouldn't be that good for us. But like let's say we just finished a workout or something, like we're going to partition such that that glycogen will first and foremost go to replace the muscle and liver stores of glycogen. Because we have bigger muscles and our muscles are more insulin sensitive, we can actually disproportionately put more glycogen into our muscles, into the leg muscles, because you'll have done that run up the hills, right? And then furthermore, when we want to recruit energy again, we'll have the ability to actually go back and get fat, in other words, break down fat at lower ATP demands than necessarily always going to glycogen. So in other words, we partition fuel in a smarter way. And these patients, I mean, you can measure this clinically using something called RER and of course doing other blood tests. Like they can't break down their own fat.
So their body is essentially broken in that regard, and that can be fixed with diet.
It's a hard problem because the way I explain it to people is, and so clinically I'm not interested in weight loss, right? I mean, that's just not, I'm much more interested in longevity. And yes, sometimes weight loss comes with that, but if I ever get stuck doing, weight loss, like I'm doing the wrong thing for my interest. But the way I say to people when they want to lose weight is, look, you don't want to lose weight, you want to lose fat. Let's be very clear on our semantics. Weight is irrelevant, right? Unless you're a cyclist or some athlete for whom the actual scale means something. But for people like us, it's you want to lose fat, not weight. And then when you say you want to lose fat, what does that mean in English? Well, do you want fewer fat cells or do you want each fat cell to be smaller? Those are totally different questions. If you want fewer fat cells, have liposuction. But we know that doesn't fix you metabolically. So if you want to be less fat, you have to have smaller fat cells. Now, a fat cell conceptually has 2 inputs and 1 output. So now I say, let's reframe the question. You got a room with 100 people in it. You want fewer people in the room. What has to happen? More people have to leave the room than enter the room. So similarly, if you have a fat cell and you want it to be less fat, you got to get more fat out of it than enters it. And the fat that exits the cell exits via a process called lipolysis. And the inputs to a fat cell are something called de novo lipogenesis, which is turning carbohydrates into fat, and reesterification, which is turning fat, like in a free fatty acid, into a triglyceride back into a fat cell. Each of those 3 doors is controlled by hormones. And so the purpose of nutrition or fasting or exercise or drugs or hormones or all these things is to manipulate those hormones in the direction of what I call negative fat flux, or what would be referred to in the literature as fat balance, negative fat balance. And the hormones that drive that are many. Insulin, hormone-sensitive lipase, testosterone, estrogen, cortisol being the 5 most important in my opinion. Maybe someone will disagree with that, but I think those are the 5 that rule the roost. And so, how do you manipulate those? Well, insulin seems to be the most important of the 5, and there's no better way to lower insulin than to not eat. So the first thing that happened to that dude who went 382 days without anything but water and minerals is he basically had very low insulin levels. In fact, once he got into raging ketosis, which he got into by about day 7, his insulin came up only to prevent him from going into ketoacidosis, which was what would happen if he had no insulin response. In other words, if he was a type 1 diabetic, he would have died of ketoacidosis because he wouldn't have had the insulin to regulate the uptick of ketones. But if you or I did this, because we have a normal pancreas, we would actually make just enough insulin to suppress ketogenesis and keep that beta hydroxybutyrate level in the, kind of in the neighborhood of probably 7 or 8 millimolar, as opposed to getting north of 12 to 15, which is when you get into trouble. So, how do you manipulate insulin? Nutrition is the first way. If you can't fast, the next best thing is to reduce carbohydrates. Carbohydrates obviously are the most insulinogenic of food, although protein can be quite insulinogenic as well. It has a different response. And then that's when you start to think about these other things. I've seen patients where they just can't lose weight. And I watch what they're doing, and they're doing everything right, but they just can't lose weight. But then you notice their cortisol levels through the roof. It's hard to get rid of fat when you have lots of cortisol. Cortisol is a very anabolic hormone to fat and a very catabolic hormone to muscle, which is the exact opposite of what we want. Testosterone, of course, is the exact opposite. Testosterone is catabolic to fat, but anabolic to muscle. And then, of course, women have a harder time because once women go through menopause, they lose all the estrogen and all the testosterone. And so now they lose two hormones that play a very important role in regulating this.
So for these people that are having the issue with cortisol levels, that's exacerbated by stress, right?
Yes.
So stress actually exacerbates your weight gain.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's interesting.
In addition to a whole bunch of other stuff.
You could literally eat the same diet and gain more weight because of stress.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Again, hormones are what's driving fuel partitioning. You're responsible for what you put in your mouth, but in many ways at that point, like the hormones take over and decide where it's going.
Have conservative values moved in one way or another? Have they
I would say that
at all?
My personal values probably haven't shifted very much, but my political values have shifted libertarian. So I used to be a proponent of criminalization of marijuana. I'm no longer. I've been in favor of
What
decriminalization
changed
of pot.
that for you?
A couple of things. One was just a general sense the government sucks at everything. And the more I see the government try to crack down on things, the more prevalent it becomes. People were dealing pot on my 6th grade, 7th grade playground in public school. So obviously,
Welcome to LA.
Yeah, exactly. And then
That's terrible.
Just a general perception, not only that the government sucks at everything, but that you got to own your own actions, and also examining more of the evidence about the impact of pot on people's lives. And again, there's you ruining your own life through use of drugs, and then there's drugs that legitimately ruin other people's lives. Right? There are drugs that remove your ability to even reason or think. I think there are only two reasons to criminalize drugs in any fashion. One is if there are drugs like, for example, PCP that legitimately make you violent, and then you are going out and committing acts of violence against people. Then there's a case. Or if you're talking about a drug where it legitimately robs you of your capacity to reason. If it were heroin, if you were able to actually crack down on it successfully. But even there, I'm not sure that the proper government solution is criminalization, because we've criminalized it and it's still incredibly prevalent. So
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. And I agree with you in terms of drugs being extremely detrimental. And the other part is that there's comparable drugs that are legal. And comparable drugs meaning not even really comparable, drugs that are far more devastating, like alcohol. Like you could just go to any grocery store and buy a jug of whiskey and kill yourself with it.
Yep.
It's not difficult. You just drink the whole thing and
we have laws on
you're
the
dead.
books already that prevent externalities.
Yeah.
If you drive high, it's the same as driving drunk.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that you need additional laws to do that. And also, I'm not opposed to zoning laws. Like, I don't think a pot shop should open up right next to my house, right? They're residential zoning. That's fine.
Same with liquor stores, though.
Right. I don't want a liquor store right next to my house. This is correct.
Yeah.
Right. So I've become libertarian in some ways on that sort of stuff. The same thing is true, by the way, when it comes to the issue of same-sex marriage. So on a personal moral level, I'm opposed to same-sex marriage. I'm an Orthodox Jew, and I believe that a man and a woman were made for each other. When it comes to government involvement, I don't think that's anybody's business. I think a lot of things. I think adultery is bad too. I don't think the government ought to be involved in adultery. I'm so strict, I don't think premarital sex is a good thing, right? I've been very vocal about this. I was a virgin until I was married. My wife was a virgin until she was married. I think that's a good thing. So I think the government has anything to do with any of those things? No, I don't. I don't think it's any of the government's business. It's consensual activity. There are no externalities. So what exactly is the government getting involved in? And when the government gets involved in stuff, then there are externalities, right? Once the government starts to cram down its vision on people, then you start to get unintended externalities. So, for example, with the legalization, my view on marriage is that the government should get completely out of the business. I don't think the government should be involved in straight marriage. I don't think it should be involved in gay marriage. I think the government should be out.
I agree 100%.
And the reason that I say that is because as a religious person, right, who believes in traditional marriage, I have two marriage certificates. I have the one from the state that I don't give two craps about. It's buried somewhere in my garage. And then I have my religious marriage certificate, which meant, among other things, that I got to shtup my wife, right? I mean, like, this was the one that mattered to me. And I think that's true for most religious people. The religious ceremony matters a lot more than the state saying a thing. And the state isn't incentivizing marriage. People aren't getting married because they're like, yeah, I need the tax break.
Right.
So that's a bunch of nonsense. And once the government decides what version of marriage it wants to push, that then comes into conflict with other values. So, for example, once the state of California decides that same-sex marriage is on legal par with heterosexual marriage, now I'm worried about the externality of I have a religious day school, or I have my synagogue. My synagogue is a religious institution. It doesn't approve of same-sex marriage. Now is the government going to come in and tell my synagogue how it ought to act with regard to same-sex marriage? I don't think that's the government's business. So how about this? How about everybody gets to do basically what they want, associate with whom they want, and it's none of the government's business? This seems like a pretty good, happy medium.
I'm so glad you talked about the two things that I wanted to talk to you about that I'm sure we disagree about. One of them being marijuana and the other one being gay people marrying each other. So let's start with the marijuana one. Do you think marijuana ruins people's lives? Is that one of your contentions?
I think that it can, and I think in the same way
Have you
alcohol
ever had
can.
any experience with marijuana?
No, I'm just talking about the statistical overuse of marijuana among teenagers does have detrimental brain effects that have some long-term after effects.
It's pretty proven, and that's one of the things that I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to cover that, but you were in the middle of a rant when we were joking around about 6th and 7th graders selling pot. Don't smoke pot when you're young. You really should. It's not good for the development of your brain. Same thing with drinking. You know, I didn't smoke a lot of pot when I was a kid. I did it a handful of times until I was 30 years old, but I did drink a bunch of times when I was young and in high school. And it's terrible for brain development.
Right.
Especially before you're 25 and your frontal cortex hasn't even fully formed. Your frontal lobe is like this. It's a developing thing. And there was an article recently that I posted from BBC that was saying that you probably shouldn't be considered an adult until you're 30.
Right. They're saying brain development doesn't even stop until you're 26 or 28. This is why when people are saying let's lower the voting age to 16, I'm like, what the
fuck are you talking about?
What in the world?
When I was 16, I was a chimp. You know, I mean, really, I was a chimp in a high school. Now, when the problem that I have with many people's perceptions on marijuana is that it's based on ignorance, meaning no personal experience with it. You know, and
listen, I'll admit I have no personal experience with marijuana, so
I know you don't.
I'm not speaking.
You probably
from
should get high. That's what I'm trying to say.
Man, I've seen the effects on stock prices when people get high in the studio.
Oh, they jump up, man. They jump down for a little when a bunch of chickens jump off the boat, but then they come right back up. The marijuana thing is, in my opinion, it's another one of those things where people have this categorized box that they like to put marijuana users in. Like, this is the category: lazy, stoner, stupid, delusional.
It's too widespread for that. I mean, there are people I know who are doctors who use marijuana. So,
well, there's the jiu-jitsu community is a big one. There's a giant percentage of the jiu-jitsu community that does jiu-jitsu high. They have competitions.
Sounds like more of a party.
It's not, man. I'm telling you, because it's not what people think it is. If you've never smoked marijuana, this is going to be a very difficult thing to grasp. But marijuana enhances jiu-jitsu because it eliminates the rest of the world. When you're rolling, which rolling is like, say, if you and Jamie were going to have a sparring match, that would be rolling. Like, you'd slap hands and then you'd go, and you're trying to choke him and he's trying to get you in an arm bar and you're going after it. When you do that on marijuana, it's like you don't think of anything else other than those movements, and it becomes like this very intense meditation in violence. Like, it's not violent in terms of, most of the time you don't really even get hurt. It's like you get to the point. Like, one of the beautiful things about jiu-jitsu is you can grab a hold of someone and choke them to the point where they're going to go to sleep, and you would kill them if you kept going, and they tap, and then you're friends again, and everybody's cool, and you try to do it to me and I try to do it to you. And you really can do it reasonably hard without people getting hurt. And it happens every day all throughout the world. A lot of these people are high. And they're doing this jiu-jitsu practice in this almost like trends. It's a transcendent state.
If you can function when you're using marijuana, I don't care.
But you can. This is what I'm saying. The perceptions are off.
So, I mean, I would assume there's a small subset of the population for whom that's not true, right? Who are overusing marijuana.
Yes.
And
that's probably the majority, in fact.
Okay, so then, but again,
I would say
that's not a case
the same way with food.
I agree. So I don't think there's anything we disagree about here, because I'm not talking about criminalizing marijuana use. Right. I think that we should honestly discuss the evidence that for a subset of the population, there is some evidence that marijuana is addicting, but it's a subset. It's not everybody who's on marijuana. The vast majority of people on marijuana are not addicted to marijuana. I think in the same way, alcohol. I mean, it's true of alcohol as well.
There's people that are going to be addicted to almost anything, and I think there's absolutely people that are addicted to sugar. There's for sure people that are addicted to nicotine and alcohol and all these things that we let people have.
The material addictiveness of marijuana is not comparable to opioids, though, for example.
It's not even comparable to alcohol or nicotine. It seems to be very rare when people become physically addicted to it. Extremely rare. And what's common, though, is abuse. And it's common in everything that human beings consume. Abuse is common, as we said, with food. It's certainly common with alcohol. It's certainly common with pills.
But this is why, I really believe that the way to solve some of these problems is a social fabric problem. Like, it's a parenting problem, it's a social fabric problem, it's a personal choice problem.
Yes.
And that's why virtually every solution I suggest is so funny. I'm constantly, conservatives like me who are libertarian leaning are constantly accused of being non-compassionate. No, it's just our compassionate solutions don't involve the use of government.
Yeah.
It's like we're going to encourage people to make better decisions with their lives. And if you choose not to do that, it's a free country.
So the goat really did fall over and die?
Well, no. Guy Savelli, so we tracked down the goat starer. This is he now runs a dance studio in Ohio, the Savelli Dance and Martial Arts Studio.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so we tracked him down. I said to him on the phone, so do you still ever, kill goats just by staring at them? And he went, well, as a matter of fact, just last week, I killed my hamster just by staring at it.
Hamsters live to be like 3 days old.
He said he caught it on video, and I said, well, can we come and watch the video? So we went. He said, okay. So we flew to Ohio to meet Guy Savelli. So so the hamster's running around in its wheel, and Guy's off camera staring at the hamster, and then finally the hamster gets off the wheel, and it's all the sawdust, and then the hamster drops. Stops moving, drops down and stops moving amid the sawdust. So I'm like, whoa. And then the hamster gets up again and the video ends. So I was like, that's not dead. A guy said,
You flew all the way to Ohio to see a video of a hamster.
Yeah. So a guy said, yeah, my wife told me not to. My wife said, don't show them the part where the hamster dies. So
What?
yeah, in case I was a
What?
bleeding heart liberal, and I was
What?
yeah.
His wife told him to not show you the video that you flew all the way the fuck to Ohio
Yeah.
to see?
Well, I think it's possible that the hamster just doesn't die.
No way, bro.
But it's true. But Guy showed me a whole bunch.
Is that him?
Yeah, that's Guy
Go
Savelli.
full screen, please.
You need to put a Guy Savelli in mind. Hey, what happens when you've got a guest who's on for 3 hours and they want to use the bathroom?
Just go ahead and use the
midway?
bathroom. Good.
Can you cover for me?
Yeah. We'll turn the volume on here.
Okay.
Oh, he's doing some fake martial arts too.
There's
this
Guy
is
Savelli.
hilarious.
Somewhere on there, there's
Oh, you don't understand. This is my favorite stuff, John Ronson. Look at this. This is my favorite stuff. It's all pokes.
Triangle of Death.
Oh, it's called the Triangle of Death.
Yeah. I didn't find the.
Go back to that. I need to watch that again. This is hilarious.
Muscle right here, behind there's a carotid artery.
Ooh, the
And
artery.
here is the
Esophagus.
airway.
Yeah.
Now there's the ABC approach of helping a person or hurting a person.
Mm.
They need a clear airway.
Mm.
They need to be able to breathe,
Mm.
and they need to have circulation of blood through their body.
Pause that for a second. What's one thing about bullshit artists is they always use these real technical terms, especially martial arts bullshit artists. They always talk about medical terms that they're disrupting the nerve, the vagus nerve that goes to the brain, and this is your C6, C7, your cervical disc, and I'm gonna attack the cervical disc through the carotid artery. They're all it's almost like they learn all these technical terms to sort of make their horseshit look more palatable.
In order to live. In the poison hand technique,
Poison hands.
although I'm not showing you how to strike to penetrate the skin, of which we have a way to do that. What? I'm going to show you the motion that we use.
Please
to get
don't
through
show
there.
anybody, sir. With your flabby
Now,
grandma
just watch a
arms.
second.
He's gonna watch. He's gonna show you. Oh boy.
How's he alive?
It's just the end part is my favorite, where he does the fucking karate stance behind the guy's back.
Is that your tap?
And look at that, the end part, the little limp hand to the back. Oh, that guy's wonderful. I don't know why, man. I don't know why, but this stuff gives me so much pleasure. I enjoy fake martial arts videos more than almost anything. Almost as much as Hold This Beer, the Twitter account that every 2 days I have to retweet one because I find a good new one. I don't know why. Oh, he's got new stuff. Oh, what's he gonna do?
Mind development.
Oh, mind
And
development.
striking techniques.
Let me see this. Let me see this. The guy's coming close. He's touching him. He's about to touch him.
What the fuck?
What the fuck was that? The guy's about to touch him.
Chun Kun Tao means that you can do whatever has to be done to protect, not hurt.
You're
This
gonna
is
hear
the
this.
first real
Is that the dim
exercise
mat?
towards
Is that the
that
death
goal.
touch?
No, he's got this. Hold on, play that back. Play that back. Development of the mind.
So you know the shit better than me, right?
Oh, yeah, I
this is-
certainly do.
This is your bread and butter.
This is, well,
Pak Chun Kun Tao
this is
means
something
that
I've been
you can
doing
do
more than
whatever
I've been
has
doing
to be
anything in my whole
done to
life.
not hurt. This is the first real exercise towards that goal.
You gotta see this. It's so fucking stupid.
So he's
Oh,
the
he's
goat.
gonna-
He's the goat star for the Minister.
Oh, he's just gonna punch a watermelon.
Right.
Oh, you're crazy, bro.
Solid watermelon.
Oh, it's solid? Oh, no way. That's impenetrable. That's basically a brick wall.
His fingers.
He's gonna use his fingers. 1, 2. Oh, I broke his hand, son.
Great.
You broke your hand, kid.
He's the first guy who told me about the dim mak, the death touch.
He went right through that watermelon, bro. I would let that guy do that to me. I'd be like, okay, fuck the watermelon, dude. Let me tighten up my
Oh
stomach.
yeah, I've
what's
seen
gonna
these.
do?
I've seen this stuff. This is guy doing military stuff, right? This is deep.
Well,
this is Minister.
it's not
goat
really
stuff right here.
military, but he's wearing a military outfit.
Oh, really? I do know that guy like went to Fort Bragg and did the goat stuff. Like he showed me documentation.
See this right here? Listen, man. I used to do this. Look at that, so stupid. That guy. He picked his leg up when he's doing it. Oh, this is hilarious. This guy's gonna do it with his fingertips.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say, for instance, I'm a big believer in never being sore. You should train, and the next day you should wake up feeling good. Okay. Now why?
How's that possible?
Well, because look, if okay, that's great. That's a great example. Let's say your energy levels.
We're talking about fit people, by the way, right?
Every human being.
So guys never worked out before?
Even if first day, never
How
trained.
is it possible to work out
Beautiful.
and not be sore?
No problem. Beautiful.
Okay, here we go.
So let's say there's something called rate of perceived exertion. Okay. So let's say I make you do pull-ups, and let's say the maximum amount of pull-ups you can do, the maximum amount of pull-ups is 10. Let's keep a nice round number. At 11, you couldn't do 11. If I pointed a gun at you, you couldn't do 11. Should I make you do 10 pull-ups on our workout? No. I'm going to make you do 5. Why? Because I'm setting you up to work the next day. The next day we're going to do 5. And the next day we're going to do another 5. And then we're going to do 6. When 6 is really easy, we're going to do 7. Why? If you count, if you did 10 pull-ups on Monday, you're going to be sore till Thursday. Let's say it's really your max. So Thursday, you've only done 10 pull-ups. From Monday to Thursday, you've only done 10 pull-ups. Me, I've been doing 5 pull-ups every day. So I'm at 20 pull-ups already, 25 pull-ups. I have more volume than you. Now, if you add up at the end of the year, who trained more? I've trained way more than you. So let's say I go to jiu-jitsu practice. I'm doing jiu-jitsu every single day, 3 rounds, 5 days a week. That's 15 rounds. You go in twice a week, but you kill yourself. You do 5 rounds each day. You push yourself those last 2 rounds and you burn yourself out. I still did 15. You're at 10. At the end of the year, I've done countless rounds more. I've had so much more training than you. So how much training can we pack in the week? That's the real question. How much volume can you expose your athlete to? So I always tell people, look, exercise can produce energy. So let's say I'm feeling like a 7 out of 10. 10 being I'm really like energized. 1, I was like really lethargic, feeling like I need to lay down. And 7, I'm feeling good. Okay. If I get up and I do a right amount of exercise, the right amount, I can feel like an 8.5. Exercise can give me a tonic effect, like drinking this coffee. So let's say I just do some jumping jacks, I hit the back for a couple of rounds, I'm feeling good. Once you get that high, shut it down. Don't go into the phase where your body's beat up, tight, broken up. Don't redline the body. That's only for training camps, for a small period of time. Why? Because you get a little bit more from the system. But in the long run, you get less. In the long run, you've taxed the system. So if you do that regularly, by the time you actually get good, you'll be broken up. That's why I do a lot of flow training. Have you ever heard of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's flow?
No.
Okay, so can you Jamie, can you look up a flow chart? It'll be so much simpler. Like just put in flow in the workplace or flow chart. This is pure genius. This guy is pure genius. Basically, he went and he coined the term flow. So like when you're in a state of flow, we've all been in a state of flow. The number one way to know that you're in a state of flow is time flies by. I'm sure sometimes you've done podcasting and you're like, whoa, is it 3 hours already?
Yeah.
It was a great podcast. You know, the one where you have the worst guest or you're having the worst workout, it feels like every minute is an hour. That's a bad, you're not in a state of flow. A state of flow is you're having the right amount of difficulty, but it's not so difficult that you go into stress, and it's not so easy that you're bored. It's the right amount of challenge. So let's say as simple as playing like Tetris. If I put you on a level that's too high, you're gonna play for 5 minutes, you're gonna be like, I'm done. If I put you on a level too easy, you're gonna be like, this is boring. If I put you at the right amount of level, you see that's the flow channel. So if the challenge is too high, you'll meet anxiety. If it's too low, you're boredom. When I go in the practice room, I'm trying to create flow. I'm having fun. Training should be addictive. Imagine training was addictive. Everybody would train, everybody would be fit. But people always go into anxiety. They go and they slam their body. Then I have to convince you to do it again 3 days later, 2 days later. And you're like, dude, the mental energy is going to take me to get there. Like, it shouldn't be. Training should be a pulling force. It should be pulling you. You want to go training. If you don't want to go training, it's not fun. If it's not fun, you're not going to do a lot of it. And if you're not going to do a lot of it, you're never going to reach mastery. So how do I make it pleasurable? How to make it fun? I have to be in a flow state. And you can get into a flow state in almost anything. But when you're out of that flow state, cut it. We're going to get further. We're going to do more training if we cut it today and come back in tomorrow. Because I'm a big believer in consistency over intensity. Intensity should be done once in a while. Because by nature, intensity can only be done once in a while. If you're going hard every day, you're not really going hard every day. You can't go your max every day. There's a cost to going to your max. Can you sprint every single day? You cannot sprint every single day. It's ludicrous. You could sprint once or twice a week. The best sprinters in the world, they sprint once or twice a week. Nobody sprints every day. Because intensity, by nature, entails that you need to take a break. Because if you don't need to take a break, you didn't really go to your maximum intensity. If you lift your maximum lift, the maximum amount of reps you can, the maximum weight you can lift. If you do 2 reps, that wasn't your max. Because if it was, you wouldn't have a second rep in you. You understand? Right. I would have to give you a break for you to have a second rep. So we didn't find your true max, right? Intensity, maximum effort entails you have to stop because it's the maximum. There was no more reserves. There are no more reserves.
So what do you think about people that say there's no such thing as overtraining?
Here's the John Denner narrative, and he coins it really, really well. He says, look, it's under rest. So he says, look, you can overtrain if you didn't give your body the rest later.
Yeah.
But he says, look, no matter how hard I push and practice, if I didn't kill myself, I can rest from it and recover and have super compensation. I agree with that.
Some guys have made great strides with just mental fortitude and mental strength, overtraining the shit out of themselves.
Okay, but can I ask you this?
Yes.
They were successful, yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
But their bodies break down.
Right. But could they have been better if
Possibly.
they used flow? Exactly.
Right.
As
but
good as they were.
Like Dan Gable, for example. Like what Dan Gable essentially was done in his 20s, right? In terms of like his body's broken down.
Exactly.
Knee replacements, hip replacements, that kind of deal.
Let me ask you this. Who wins more often, Russians or American wrestlers?
Russians.
Every time an American wrestler wins, he's like some prodigy.
Mm-hmm.
He's rare. It's rare. It does happen, but it's rarely he's a technical master.
Right.
However, you have these Russian guys that win gold medals. You've never heard of them, and they're like Michael Jordans of the sport.
Yeah.
There's just so many of them. They train long, consistent practices. Whereas in America, we do Monday, Wednesday, Friday hard. We kill it. And then you rest Tuesday, Thursday. The Eastern Bloc had a totally different understanding. They're like, it's volume, volume, volume. Near the fight, short and intense. Only near the competition phase. But before that, it's the maximum amount of volume you can. Imagine me and you we're 2 athletes, A and B. You're A, I'm B. You're training jiu-jitsu 3 times a week really, really hard. You're going all out. I'm training jiu-jitsu every single day. My average practice is 2 hours. Your average practice is 2 hours. But when you go in, you kill it. Like you go with all the black belts and you kill it. At the end of the year, I'm averaging 3 practices or 2 practices more than you. So I've had 100 practices more than you by the end of the year. 104 practices. Let's give 2 weeks for vacation. 100 practices more than you. 200 hours more than you I've been training. When we roll, your intensity that you put on the mat is going to be irrelevant. Why? Because I've also tasted that intensity periodically. It's not that much of a factor now. When you go super aggressive on me, when you attack me aggressively, I have felt that. I know how to deal with it. Plus, I have an extra 100 hours on you, 200 hours. So I'm going to mangle you. You know what I'm saying? The volume is far more important than the intensity. The intensity, by nature, is need to be done periodically. If you do it every day, it's not intensity.
I get picked up in Atlanta, take me to Atlanta jail, I go and put me in this modular, and I go in this modular, and there's black people, all the different races, right? Well, over there, they don't politic like we do in California, right? So this is my first understanding of how this system works, right? So I go in there, and the only thing that you can't do in that system is you can't eat at the same table with a different race. Besides that, once you're up from the dinner table, I can trade with any race. I could do whatever, talk to them, chop it up, like.
But
whatever.
you have to eat with people of your own race
only. Yeah.
Wow.
Only. So then.
And they tell you this, so somebody informs you.
Oh yeah.
I got informed when I went in.
So when I moved from Atlanta to California politics much different. You can't trade with blacks. You can't trade with others. You can't trade with. So you can only do trade with your race, and then the whites get along with the essays. So what ended up happening is like, so you have others, which are any other race besides Mexican, white, or black. And this is a car. It's called a car, right? So everybody has a car, their own race. So you have Woods, you have Skinheads, you have Paisas, you got Mexicans, you got Crips, Bloods, and others.
And the Paisas roll with the Mexicans, the Skinheads roll with the Woods.
Yeah. And if something really pops off, some race
click
shit,
up.
then Mexicans and the whites will click up against the blacks, or the blacks.
It's
and the
always
others
all them
click up.
against us. It always sucked to be. It sucked to be black in them times. I'm telling you, real shit. But we thump though. We thump. So we always knock them out
so
anyway.
you start trying to figure out this shit, you know, like you get thrown into that fire and you're trying to figure out all these unwritten rules. You know, there's no rule book, a law book come in and say, hey, do this.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so a guy could really direct you in the wrong way if he wants to. You know what I mean? Like tell you some sideways shit, and next thing you know, you're in a wreck. You know?
Ooh.
So I go in.
Set you up.
So I go in. This was actually my second experience, not my first experience in there, but my second experience. I go in. They put me into a psych ward, a psych watch, getting extradited from Atlanta to here. And so I go into this area, and I don't know anything, you know, and this black guy in the psych ward is like yelling in this module, you know, like, anybody want to learn how to play chess? Anybody want to learn how to play chess? You know? And I was like, hell yeah, I want to learn how to play chess, right? So I walk over, I sit down with this fool, and he starts showing me how to play chess. But it's a black guy at a black guy table, and I'm a white guy. So now I just sat down at this black guy table, and all the Woods and all the skinheads in there are like now against me. You know?
Oh no.
But I didn't know. Like,
Oh no, you had no idea.
I had no idea.
Oh no.
Right? So now
No.
Yeah, so now my cell pops, and I go to walk to the shower, and I walk past the other cell that pops, which is another skinhead in that room, and I go walk past his cell, smack, right? So now we're fighting.
Wow.
You know, so clean this kid up. Now they move me to another module. So now this kid put a kite out, like, oh, we got to get this guy, cause da-da-da-da-da. So
Oh, fun.
yeah. So I'm moving this other module. At the time, the institution had a lot of skinheads in there, and the skinheads will politic hard. Like, if they have numbers, then they'll push the politics, you know? And I looked like a skinhead when I went in. I had no hair, you know, like a just bald guy going in there, you know what I mean?
Right.
So they all start treating me like I'm one of them, but I'm not a fucking skinhead. So this guy come over and he's trying to get me to hide this little shank in my cell. Well, that's weapons manufacturing, carries 2 more years.
Oh my God.
That's how people start getting hit. You
So-
start catching more cases when you're only supposed to do 2. Now you're doing 10. It just stacks up. But go ahead.
And then there's intimidation factor, right? So this guy got a big ass swastika tattooed on his face right here, teardrops,
Jesus.
lightning bolts everywhere, you know what I mean? Like this, he's lifer, you know?
Right.
So big shit goes down. I end up choking this guy unconscious,
Oh Jesus Christ.
drag him out of my cell because he's trying to get me to hold this shank
Yeah.
in my cell. I can't, not doing this, bro. And you come in my cell, it's on.
Right.
So now we fighting, take this guy out, right? Just choke him out, beat him up, drag him out, hit him with some elbows. Now he's leaking. Drag his ass out into the little modular.
So do they know you can fight before you're in
They
here?
don't know.
No.
They have to
No.
How long before they figure it out?
Well, it took
word
a
start
minute.
traveling.
It took
Word
a minute
travel.
because most of the fighting goes on in the cell or in a shower. You know what I mean? So when the fight actually broke out in the open, when I was fighting multiple people, is what happened. And then all the fucking guards watched. Everybody's watching from their cells. You know, like this is a different time. So this whole incident takes place. I beat this guy up, take him out of my cell. Right now, they take him away. They move this guy out of the modular.
Do they get mad at you?
No, they just come in. You know, they don't really care. The guards don't give
Really?
a shit. They don't give a shit.
So you fucked that dude up. Is he out cold? So does he have a? Do
I
they have
choked
to
him
ask him?
unconscious.
Do they have to ask him what his story is?
I don't give a fuck.
But they don't ask you. They just let you go. It's okay.
No,
Like is
they
there a
can't-
punishment? That's what I'm getting at.
They locked me in my cell. I couldn't get out of my cell for like 2 weeks.
Oh, for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just
So-
alone in yourself, constant.
Yeah,
Nothing.
They
Nothing
won't
but
pop
yourself.
the door. So what happens
Really?
is for a certain amount of hours of the day, they got to pop the door and let you into a bigger cell, a bigger
Right.
room. You know what I mean? So I just couldn't get into the day room for like 2 weeks. But the crazy shit of it all is, like I'm trying to tell you, I'm trying to learn this system, right? This new rules. So what happens is this guy, okay, we talk about the cars and the races, right? So each race has their own car, which means there's a key holder. And the key holder to that car controls the race. So they make decisions for the race. They try and keep other races out of car wrecks. Like now we got a feud with the blacks, or we got a feud with the Mexicans or whatever.
They call them car wrecks.
Yeah, well, if we get in a fight with them, the key holder is the guy that can communicate with the other key holders to the races and try and keep peace.
They don't go and delegate it.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I didn't have it happen where we finna get it down with the Mexicans, and then our keys will go and they keys, and we finna jump, we get ready to jump, and they shake hands. All right, it ain't going, and then it go back down.
So yeah, and you're trying to figure all this out. So what happened was I beat this fool's ass, and now I got the keys.
Oh, wow.
But I can't have the keys because I'm a first termer. So first termer's not allowed to have the keys. But nobody wanted to try to take the keys from me. So in order for them to take the keys from me, they got to fight me to take the keys away from me.
Oh, boy.
So that kind of changed the dynamics of the room, because now I'm able to navigate with these other races and have these conversations with these fucking ignorant people that don't understand how to really
talk.
You know what I mean? Like how to communicate and keep things cool. They misunderstand what this guy says or misinterpret what this guy says, and next thing you know, it's hot for everybody, you know?
And it's just misinterpretations.
Yeah, because they're dumb. Most of these guys are dumb, bro. Like, they're like the conversation, it made me, in some ways, you're sitting there listening to these guys, you're like, these guys really think this shit? Like, they
fight about the dumbest shit.
Yeah.
What is Finding Hitler all about? This is a show that you're on, and it's on A&E. Is that what it's on?
Yeah, A&E is the parent network. It airs on History Channel, and we just had our third season that just finished airing.
What's the thought process behind this? Is it legit? Because a lot of people are like, Finding Hitler, get the fuck out of here. They found Hitler, he died.
Yeah, I mean,
not really.
We don't know.
Right.
That's. I mean, this isn't like Ancient Aliens. This is They declassified a bunch of documents. Both the Israelis, the British, and the Germans and Americans in the past 20 years have been consistently declassifying documents. And there were a bunch of specifically FBI documents that we were spending millions and millions of dollars actively searching for Hitler after the war.
Really?
Yeah, like millions of dollars. Like Hoover was like, no, send more FBI agents to South America, to North Africa, go to the Canary Islands, go to Spain, trying to find out where this guy went. Tons of real FBI documents with real leads, with real informants, some first eye accounts saying that they physically. So anyways, that's the show, is us trying to find out, sift through reality and the fiction of the allure, the mystery of that asshole.
So what's the official story? The official story is that he killed himself, right?
Yep.
He killed himself in the bunker with Ava Braun.
Yep.
And is there any photographic evidence of his death or anything?
Yeah. So what the Russians got the body, and they got his skull. And when they brought it back to Moscow, nobody has ever been able to independently verify who and what this body is. They let one genetic test occur, and the body with the bullet holes that they said was Hitler, and have said, and that's the narrative, that's the story, that's all the eyewitness accounts that are even in the vicinity of collaborating with each other, and corroborating each other's testimony. Like the closest version, because none of it seems to be very accurate, is that, okay, here's Hitler's skull, and when they did the genetic testing, it's that of a 35-year-old woman. So they're like, oh, well, this isn't Hitler, but they've said for the past 80 years that this is Hitler. So, okay, first, before we start throwing stones at Russia, let's go back to 1945, April, in Berlin. You have the Allies coming in, wrecking shop, dropping bombs, blowing everything up they can in every single which way. You have the Russians coming in from the opposite direction. They don't even have enough guns to arm all their soldiers. So if they have 200 guys, or 200,000 guys, they have 100,000 guns. If the guy in front of you dies, you just pick up his gun. That's what's happening in April of 1945 in Berlin. So the noose is tightening. There is it is chaos, anarchy, pandemonium. This is hell on earth, is Berlin, 1945. So I don't know if you could get a real story, the way that we do it now, where we have, this forensic experts that come in and document everything, and we look at all the different testimonies, say this is exactly how. It's not CSI. This is 1945 Berlin. It's crazy. So I don't know.
So there was no like absolute proof.
No.
And a lot of Nazis did escape and go to South America.
The majority of anyone with power. The Nuremberg trials were not a witch hunt, but it was to close a chapter so we could start moving forward with communism. That's what it was. The threat of fascism, the threat of Hitler, the threat of killing all the Jews, the threat of world domination by the Nazis, that threat's gone. What's the next threat?
Communism.
It's communism.
Right.
So that had to be a closed chapter of our history so we could focus our resources and our efforts to what inevitably was going to, I mean, the wall goes up. We have East and West Berlin. You know, we're already looking at Korea. I mean, this happens almost overnight.
Right, very quickly.
You know, when Patton's like, no, homies, we need to go all the way to Moscow. This is not the end of our war. And we didn't listen to him. We then have been, fighting communism for the past 75 years.
Well, Robert Downey Jr., just from Tropic Thunder. Think about that. You could never do that anymore. You can't have blackface anymore.
Yeah, you know what? I'll say this. People have to understand where it comes from. There are real people out there that really mean you harm, like outside of us. I mean, there's some real people who really don't fucking like you, whatever you are, whether you're black, you're white, you're straight, you're gay, whatever it is. There's some people who really don't like. We're the entertainment, and it's easy. We're easy targets. We're easy. It's easy for you to jump on Robert Downey Jr. or Jamie Foxx or Joe because it's easy. You know, when it's real things, which, whether it's politics or whether it's whatever, a lot of times we're not ready for that fight. But it's easy to sort of pick the comedian. I called Robert. I said, listen, I need you to play a Mexican. He says, dude, here's the deal. Sure, fuck it. Sure, why not? Fuck it. Sure, of course. Sure, Mexican, whatever. But then he texts back and said, I'm nervous to play the Mexican. I said, well, shit, you played the black dude and you killed that shit. We're just all, we got to be able to do characters.
What kind of blowback did he get from playing the black dude?
None. Because we fucked with him.
It was before The Wire, too, though. It was like, what year was Tropic Thunder? I feel like that was like 10 years ago.
It was a while. But here's the thing. We fuck with Robert Downey Jr. Like, that's our guy.
Right.
Like, I did his birthday party. And my first joke was, how dare you take all of these roles from black people? And everybody's laughing. So it's sort of like the entertainers, man. You got to give us room. You know what I'm saying? Like to play in it. I'll show you when I.
Or you got to take that room.
You got to take it. You can't worry about. I saw Chappelle somewhere. It was like, they were asking him about his jokes, and he's like, "Yo, man, look, people have said worse shit." And I think he said something about Donald Trump saying "grab him by the pussy" or some shit, whatever. But it was true. It was like the one thing. That you look at what happened with politics this year, people sort of stripped away a lot of things. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of what you believed in, whatever person you voted for, there was a lot of things that were sort of addressed about, like, maybe we were playing things a little too close. Like some of those politicians were afraid to say what Donald Trump was saying, and they ended up being left in the dust because people were a little like, well, he's got a point in the sense that we're playing things a little too close.